Hello everyone, welcome to News Mongolia on MNB World. It's Wednesday, October 26th. I am G.Zandanshatar. And for our top stories, National Conference Animal Husbandry, Food Supply and Security is taking place. Speaker G.Zandanshatar is on working visit to the Republic of Korea. Japan Film Days 2022 launched on October 25th at Tengis Cinema. For other news, stay tuned. The National Conference Animal Husbandry, Food Supply and Security, held under the auspices of the President of Mongolia, started on Tuesday at the Government Palace. The conference is covering emerging issues in the sector, including the food and agriculture, legal environment, food supply and safety, social protection for herders, the current state of private veterinary hospitals, and the processing of raw materials.
President of Mongolia Khurelsukh opened the conference with a speech.
In the future, we will pay attention to emerging issues to create an environmentally friendly and sustainable animal husbandry industry that improves the income, livelihood, and quality of life of herders. First, it's necessary to pay special attention to improving herders' income and social security. Also, government policy should be directed at preparing the succession of herders, supporting and encouraging young new herders, and creating conditions for stable living and work in the provinces.
As of 2021, there were over 300,000 herders in Mongolia, which makes up about 15% of the number of citizens of working age. The total number of livestock has increased from 26 million in 1990 to 67 million in 2021, an increase of 41 million over the last 31 years. Today, the animal husbandry sector represents 15% of the Mongolian economy. 1 out of every 5 people who are employed works in animal husbandry, and the sector gathered 7.2 trillion Mongolian tugrix in 2021. The number of livestock has increased dramatically, and herders' income, livelihood, and social security have improved to a certain extent, but many challenges have arisen. 65% of all livestock pastures have deteriorated, about 77% of the land has experienced desertification, and there has been an increase in rural to urban migration. Mongolia imports more than 50% of its food products, importing $1 billion in food products last year. The President of Mongolia has set a goal of Mongolia becoming a regional organic food exporter within the next 5 years by keeping its livestock healthy, focusing on the productivity and quality of livestock, developing effective agriculture and animal husbandry, and fully satisfying domestic needs for 19 common food products. A national movement for strengthening the food supply and security is being developed nationwide.
You're watching News Mongolia on MNB World. Now let's take a look at current affairs of Mongolia.
Speaker of Parliament G.Zandanshatar is on working visit to the Republic of Korea from October 25th through 30th. During his visit, the Mongolian speaker will meet with his South Korean counterpart, Kim Jin-pyo, to strengthen bilateral relations and relations between the highest legislative bodies of the two countries, expand cooperation between the Mongolia-South Korea Friendship Group, and facilitate easing visa requirements. He will also meet with South Korea's Deputy Speaker, Foreign Minister, and the Mongolian-South Korea Friendship Group Chair.
Prime Minister of Mongolia, Oyun received non-resident ambassador of the Republic of Singapore to Mongolia, Eric Teo. While thanking the ambassador for his contribution that made his official visit to the Republic of Singapore in July success, the Prime Minister expressed pleasure for the successful implementation of the issues agreed upon during the visit. Mongolia and Singapore agreed to intensify cooperation in the areas such as introducing Singapore's knowledge-based development experience, corruption-free governance, unified accumulation fund, urban planning, and improving the governance of state-owned enterprises. The Prime Minister expressed confidence that the visit of the ambassador will play an important role in bringing Mongolia-Singapore relations to a new level, ensuring the implementation of the issues agreed upon during the visit and yielding concrete results. Emphasizing the special attention is being paid to realize the aforementioned works, the ambassador noted that the urban planning program is being implemented as part of the Memorandum of Understanding established between the Ministry of Construction and Urban Development of Mongolia and Singapore Cooperation Enterprise. He then highlighted the possibilities of cooperation in establishing a new city and free economic zone in Hushuk Valley. The ambassador noted that the Office of the Governor of Ulaanbaatar City is working together with ST Engineering Company of Singapore to introduce the road network and urban planning and introduce the digital systems in public transport, while commending the government of Mongolia's decision of appointing a minister in charge of reducing traffic congestion. The Embassy of Japan, in cooperation with the Japan Foundation, is hosting the Japan Film Days 2022 at the Tengis Cinema as part of commemorating the 50th anniversary of establishing diplomatic relations between Japan and Mongolia. The film days are free of charge and take place from October 25th through 31st.
The Embassy of Japan has selected 4 artistic films that express Japanese culture, and these films have won many prestigious awards. These Japanese films are very popular dramas, such as I Wish, Recall, Picoro's Mother and Her Days, and Tremble All You Want.
For the past 3 years, we have taken a break without organizing the Japan Film Festival. I'm happy that this festival will be held again this year. I understand that this day is an important event for the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries and a double celebration of successfully overcoming COVID-19. Our cinema not only shows commercial films, but also organizes various cultural events. One of these activities is the country's cultural and film days. Since 2008, the Japanese Film Festival has been jointly organized with the Tengis Cinema. As for this year's film, which is being released today, it's a film directed by a famous director. It has participated in many film festivals such as at Berlin, Venice and Cannes. The 4 films that will be released during these days are all representative of Japanese culture. These films are open to everyone interested in watching them and are free of charge.
In 2002, for the first time, Japanese Film Days were held at the Japan-Mongolia Center. At that time, films were broadcast on 60mm film and translated by live simultaneous translators. Later, in cooperation with the Tengis Cinema, it has become a tradition to release the best films of the previous 4 to 6 years on a yearly basis.
Now let's take a look at the currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. Now let's take a look at international news from our partner agencies. Rishi Sunak has used his first speech as Prime Minister to warn the UK is in the grips of an economic crisis as he vowed to fix mistakes made by Liz Truss and win back voters' trust.
Speaking from Downing Street just over an hour after Truss delivered an apologetic resignation speech, Sunak said his government would demonstrate integrity, professionalism and accountability, stressing a change in approach from the last 2 Tory administration. Sunak, the UK's second unelected Prime Minister in 7 weeks, sought to head off calls for a general election by insisting he would stick to the Conservatives' 2019 manifesto that won the party an 80-seat majority.
It is only right to explain why I am standing here as your new Prime Minister. Right now, our country is facing a profound economic crisis. The aftermath of COVID still lingers. Putin's war in Ukraine has destabilized energy markets and supply chains the world over. I want to pay tribute to my predecessor, Liz Truss. She was not wrong to want to improve growth in this country. It is a noble aim. And I admired her restlessness to create change.
His speech lasted 5 minutes and 56 seconds, longer than all of the equivalent speeches by prime ministers in recent decades, except for Boris Johnson in 2019, who spoke for about 11 minutes. Amid speculation, he will be forced to cut public spending to plug a roughly £30 billion fiscal black hole. The new prime minister said there were difficult decisions to come, but highlighted the furlough scheme he devised during the pandemic. Again, seeking to contrast himself with Truss, he planned to rack up huge borrowing bills to pay for swinging tax cuts before she was forced into an almighty U-turn on her economic agenda.
You're watching News Mongolia on MNB World. Now let's take a look at global current affairs.
Japan's Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs Takeo Mori met his South Korean counterpart Cho Hyun-dong and the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman on Tuesday in Tokyo. This marks the second in-person meeting of the three officials since the conservative South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol took office in May, signaling an improvement in ties between Japan and South Korea. A year ago, the Japanese and South Korean vice ministers declined to participate in a joint news conference after three-way talks in Washington, leaving Sherman to make a solo media appearance. Sherman is currently visiting Tokyo to demonstrate the country's commitment to the region and their allies Japan and South Korea. German and European Union leaders gathered experts Tuesday to start work on what Germany's Chancellor described as a new Marshall Plan for the rebuilding of Ukraine. Chancellor Olaf Scholz co-hosted a meeting with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Scholz and von der Leyen invited the leaders of the International Monetary Fund, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the European Investment Bank, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and the UN Development Programme and others on Tuesday. Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, Swiss President Ignacio Cassis, and Poland's Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki were amongst the political leaders in attendance.
Now let's take a look at our regular feature on sports. A judge in Russia has left Brittany Griner's verdict in place, upholding on Tuesday the U.S. basketball star's conviction on drug smuggling charges and reducing only slightly her 9-year prison sentence.
Brittany Griner's sentence will be modified to count the time she spent in a pre-trial detention after her February 17th arrest at a Moscow airport, the judge ruled, with each day in pretrial custody counting as 1.5 days toward her prison sentence. It was not immediately clear exactly how much that would reduce the sentence. The decision came after an appeal hearing Tuesday at which Griner, whom the U.S. considers wrongfully detained, again apologized as she and her attorneys asked the court for a more lenient sentence, arguing the verdict was unfair and unjustified under Russian law. The attorneys urged the court to acquit her, calling her sentence disproportionate at the previous court ruling wrong in saying Griner had criminal intent.
It is honestly tragic that Ms. Griner had to spend her birthday last week in a Russian prison rather than at home with her family and on the basketball court with her teammates. Nothing in the previous sentence, nothing in the result of today's appeal changes the fact that the United States government considers Ms. Griner to be wrongfully detained.
Griner's attorneys expressed disappointment after the hearing, saying in a statement the verdict contains numerous defects and they feel the punishment is excessive. U.S. officials have tried to secure the release of Griner and Paul Whelan, another American imprisoned in Russia, by proposing a prisoner swap with Russia. Those efforts have continued in recent weeks. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said Tuesday in a statement that called the latest hearing a sham adding President Biden has been very clear that Brittany should be released immediately.
Qatar's ruling emir on Tuesday lashed out at criticism of the country over its hosting of the 2022 FIFA World Cup, complaining of an unprecedented campaign targeting the first Arab nation to hold the tournament.
Since winning hosting rights for the World Cup over a decade ago, Qatar has faced scrutiny and criticism for its treatment of migrant workers and the gay community, among other issues. The alleged abuses affecting legions of low-paid laborers who power Qatar's economy and build its gleaming World Cup stadiums have been a lightning rod for protests around the world, especially in Europe. Qatar has repeatedly pushed back on the complaints, insisting that it has improved protections for migrant workers and that the criticism is outdated. In a televised speech before Qatar's legislative body on Tuesday, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani said Qatar has been subjected to an unprecedented campaign that no host country has ever faced. Brothers and sisters, since we won the honor of hosting the World Cup, Qatar has been subjected to an unprecedented campaign that no host country has ever faced. We initially dealt with the matter in a good faith and even considered some of the criticism as positive and useful in helping us to develop aspects of our that need to be developed. But it soon became clear to us that the campaign tends to continue and expand to include fabrications and double standards, that we are so ferocious that it has unfortunately prompted many people to question the real reasons and motives behind this campaign. Right groups have credited Qatar with improving its labor laws, such as by adopting a minimum monthly wage of around $275 a month in 2020, and for dismantling the kafala system that had prevented workers from changing jobs or leaving the country without the consent of their employers. Other activists call for more to be done. In recent months, pressure has also mounted in Qatar over its criminalization of homosexuality. Qatari law calls for a prison sentence of 1 to 3 years for adults convicted of consensual gay or lesbian sex. European soccer federations last month announced their intention for captains to wear an armband with a rainbow heart design as part of an anti-discrimination campaign during international matches. The tournament starts on November 20th and the final is set for December 18th.
Now let's take a look at the weather forecast for the world's major cities. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for staying with us. We'll see you on Thursday with more news and updates. Goodbye.